Welcome to today's webinar, Research, the Beginning and the End. My name is Tom Albers, and I am President of Albers Communications Group. First, let me start by telling you a little bit about Albers Communications Group. We are a full-service PR and digital marketing and communications agency headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska. We believe strongly that PR and digital marketing go hand in hand and work best when used as part of an integrated communication strategy. We represent clients in all 50 states and Canada, where our PR and social media specialists help our clients achieve positive exposure both nationally and also locally in our clients' operating markets around the country and also in Canada. We have specialized expertise helping companies become leaders in their markets and their industries through effective storytelling. I am the founder and president of Albers Communications Group, and with my contact information on screen, feel free to go ahead and reach out to me if you'd like to after today's presentation. If you'd like more details about how we could help your company's communications plans and help you meet your communications goals. It is my pleasure to speak with you about research because research has always been a passion of mine. I have over 22 years of experience in PR research and planning for many organizations and businesses in a variety of industries. My experience with different types of research projects include public opinion polling, communications audits, and focus group facilitation. When it comes to research, I help clients with methodology and sampling design, goal creation, survey design, and of course, data analysis and interpretation, really helping our clients make sense of what the data is telling us as it will help inform our PR plans and strategies. Now, I've broken today's presentation into 3 topics. First, I will start by providing an overview of research and its specific role in the PR planning process. My goal in this first section is to really emphasize the importance of including research as an integral part of your public relations plans. Next, what we'll do is take a look at the different types of research you might consider. And finally, we'll review 2 case studies in which research was utilized to achieve specific results. And at the conclusion of the webinar, we'll take a few minutes to answer any questions that have been chatted in during the webinar. Now, this slide covers some of the basic facts about research. First, you should always make time for research. And I like to look at it that some research is better than no research at all. Sometimes, I know it's very tempting when you get into PR planning. You feel like you know your organization and your industry so well. It's very tempting to base your plans simply on intuition or gut instinct. But I want to stress that it's vital to the success of any plan to take time to identify ways in which research can enhance and strengthen your decision making, because ultimately that's what we're talking about, is using research in a way that can help you make better decisions when you're putting together your PR plans and strategies. Now, when you are developing your PR plans, always leave room in your budget for research. But keep in mind that research doesn't necessarily have to always be expensive. By being innovative, there are ways you can keep your research affordable. This can include using information that may be available through your company's existing customer data, or perhaps you belong to trade organizations in your industry that they might collect data for you that you can rely upon. We call this secondary research. So there are many resourceful ways to help gather information. Another point about research is don't lose heart if your research uncovers new questions or areas that require further study. Actually, to me, that's the beauty of research, because while it may confirm your suspicions that you have going into the research, often what happens is you discover new information that is even stronger and more compelling than your original ideas that you may be testing. In fact, I have multiple examples in my own experience where we found out new information that really headed us in a different direction for our clients and ended up helping us create campaigns that were even more successful than our original concepts or ideas. And finally, keep in mind that your research process should be repeatable. The reason this is important is because if you go back and do the research again in the future, you want to know that if there are any changes, maybe there are changes in perceptions or opinions or consumer behavior, you want to make sure those changes are in fact due to changes within the population that you're studying and not due to methodology being different from one study to the next. Now, to illustrate the value that research can provide in different scenarios, let's look at some everyday examples of projects that can be enhanced by a bit of research. For example, if you are putting together a communications plan, what can research help you do? Well, research can help tell you the type of information people want to know, which can help you refine your messaging and content strategy. Research can also help you evaluate the communication habits of your target markets to help pinpoint the channels that will be best for reaching them. When planning an event, you can use research on the front end to gather information and knowledge that will help your event be as successful as possible. Several years ago, one of our clients sponsored an annual symposium for providers of mental health services, and in this particular case, we used research to help determine what speakers we should bring in on an annual basis to connect with our target audience, and it really helped us have a very successful symposium year after year. Finally, in a marketing program for a product or a service, it's key to know who the key decision makers are and what will likely move them to take action. Because ultimately, if we're talking about PR planning or communications planning, ultimately what we hope to do is shape opinions or encourage people to take certain actions. And one example of that is if you are for instance, putting together and trying to gather support for a ballot initiative, such as a school bond issue. A few years ago, I worked with a public school district, and we used research to help shape the size and the scope of the bond issue. And what the result was that we had a winning bond issue that was passed by voters because it responded to the hot buttons of likely voters. And so that's how you can use research in a way to encourage action that is positive for either your clients, in our case, or for your company or organization that you're working with. Research is an integral part of the four-step PR process, which you see on screen, and the four parts being research, planning, implementation, and evaluation. As the title of our presentation today implies, research, the beginning and the end, we believe that research has a critical place in both the planning and evaluation phases. Initial research and information gathering helps to guide and shape planning efforts, and it enables you to more effectively develop and validate specific strategies, objectives, and tactics. Using research on the back end helps to evaluate efforts and determine the level at which you were able to achieve your set objectives. We are often asked how we are able to know our PR programs are working, and the answer to that question is research. It's a definitive way to measure success. Now let's take a closer look at using research during PR planning and evaluation. Research can be used to accomplish many things. Because every PR plan is different, the use of research is likely to look different from one plan to the next. During the planning phase, research can assist your company in many ways, and those ways include it can help you understand an audience's specific attitudes, opinions, and preferences. You know, if you're going about changing certain attitudes and opinions, of course you need to start with a benchmark. What are they? Testing messages to learn which ones are more likely to lead to action is a way that research can be used. It can also help you better define your overall objectives. And as I mentioned just a couple of seconds ago, creating benchmarks to measure change. For example, if one of your goals is to increase brand awareness, then you can use research on the front end to measure what your current brand awareness levels are. You can also use research during the planning phase to identify relevant and newsworthy content for media relations programs. We often find that our clients' research will help us gain the attention of news media because it just brings credibility to the issues that we're talking about. Now let's look at evaluation. While evaluation is considered the fourth or last phase of the PR process, it is best to build in research throughout your program to help with evaluation and not wait until the end. I mentioned using research to establish benchmarks. By the same token, research can also be used to measure progress towards goals. Again, if your goal is to increase brand awareness, then you should measure your brand awareness levels on a regular basis to make sure your programs are working. Research can also help you evaluate your PR programs and allow you to make improvements or adjustments over time. And ultimately, research as an evaluation tool can help you understand the impact of your efforts. For example, were you able to change attitudes or perceptions? Were you able to improve satisfaction if that happens to be one of your goals? So let's take a look at how this applies to a couple real-life situations. One way research can be used during the planning phase is to test messages. One of our clients is a firefighters association, and we used a survey with residents who are served by the association to test and refine our messages. Now you can see the messages on screen that we tested, and from our research it's very clear that messages about maintaining service levels will strongly resonate with our constituents, and we have built these messages and integrated them into all of our public relations and digital marketing strategies. Now let's take a look at an example of how to use research and evaluation. We work with a nonprofit organization, and one of our goals for them is to increase their brand awareness. Now on screen, our client is nonprofit number 3, which is at the bottom of the chart. Now our research tells us that their brand awareness increased from 45% in 2010 to 62% in 2012. And of course 2010 was our benchmark, and so we wanted to see that increasing. And this type of measurement validates that our PR programs are working. Now let's switch gears a bit and discuss research methodology. While there are many types of research you can implement, all fall into two basic categories. They're either primary research or they're secondary research. So let's take a look at each of those. On the primary research end, primary research is compiled directly by you firsthand through methodologies that might include surveys, focus groups, in-depth interviews, or even by analyzing your internal data. In these types of projects, you are reaching out proactively to design and implement research opportunities to gather information specific to your PR project. With secondary research, you are collecting existing information that has been compiled typically by other organizations. And this information, of course, is information that you are using to fit in and enhance your planning process. This may involve using research from credible sources such as government agencies, trade associations, and universities. These entities often conduct ongoing research on topics related to the areas of expertise. It is well worth your time to investigate what organizations may be able to provide already available information that can help you with your PR plans. Research efforts can also be divided into qualitative research and quantitative research. Qualitative research is typically smaller in scale and is facilitated through direct personal contact. As a rule, it is used to understand opinions and motivations through activities such as focus groups and personal interviews. This approach, while can be very valuable to the user, it is not necessarily scientifically based and cannot be applied to larger populations. On the other hand, quantitative research can be applied on a broader scale because the methodology uses scientific processes and sampling. With quantitative research, we use tools such as telephone, online, and written surveys to collect data. Information compiled from quantitative research is very valuable and provides depth and validity to your programs. Unlike qualitative research, of course, you can often apply quantitative research to larger populations. We see this done all the time when we're in a presidential election year. You will see quantitative polls of, for instance, 1,000 people throughout the United States applied to the entire population. Statistical sampling methodologies allow us to make these conclusions within certain degrees of reliability, which are also known as sampling errors. So far, I've gone over what role research can plan in the can play in the PR process and ways to facilitate it. I mentioned that research can be used in many ways. Now what I want to do is provide you with 2 specific examples of how research played a critical role in the implementation of our clients' PR plans. In our first case study, research was valuable in helping us set a program goal and benchmark for success. We were working with a national nonprofit organization with the goal of improving satisfaction among their members. Our client wanted to find out how members currently felt about the organization and if they felt the organization was communicating effectively. And what we used was an initial survey to create a benchmark for ourselves, and that survey showed that 81% of members were satisfied with the organization. From this research, what we did was we set a 3-year goal. Our 3-year goal was to be at 90% member satisfaction by the end of our plan. Now halfway through, almost like 18 months through the plan, we conducted the same type of research, asking the same questions to the same audience. Again, remember how I mentioned how it's very important that your research be repeatable. So we repeated the same methodology, and in this way we were able to compare the results between the benchmark survey and the survey 18 months in. And what it showed us was that satisfaction had improved from 81% to 87%. And in this particular instance, research helped direct and keep our plan on track, but it also reinforced to our client that our communications plan is working. Let's take a look at our next example. This example is going to show how research can be applied to fully understand your audience. In this particular scenario, we helped one of our clients, which is a home care company, better understand a critical problem that was preventing more clients from starting service. The company wanted to improve communication between adult children and their parents with the ultimate goal to create more service opportunities for the company. What we did on the front end is we conducted a telephone survey of 1,000 adults throughout the United States who have parents who are at least age 65. What this research did was it revealed for us that the biggest communication obstacle was that many of these adult children find themselves stuck in the child role, which prevents them from having difficult conversations with their parents about sensitive aging topics. Our analysis of the research showed that communication barriers can be overcome if the conversation begins by the time the child reaches age 40 or the parent reaches age 70, whichever comes first. From this, we created what we have called the 40-70 Rule program. This is a public education campaign, and the 40 and 70 correspond to the key ages that I mentioned. Now let's take a look at the implementation and results. From an implementation perspective, the next step from doing the research was putting together a plan, of course, and our plan included communication strategies, reaching out directly to the community through presentations in the local community, as well as outreach with the local news media and media around the country. Now let's look at results. Our initial research helped us develop a program that connected with families across the United States. In the end, we were able to help more than 155,000 families start proactive conversations, which also allowed us to introduce our client services to these families. Earlier I mentioned that sometimes research can be used to generate news media coverage. And that was exactly the case with the 40/70 rule program. Our media outreach efforts, which put the research front and center, created 42 million media impressions, which garnered more than 600 print and broadcast stories throughout the United States. I hope the information presented today has provided some insight into how critical research can be to the success of any PR plan. To summarize today's information, I would emphasize that research is very beneficial to developing an effective PR plan and critical to measuring results. What research does is it provides direction and helps you define and target your efforts. In addition, solid data builds a strong foundation for your plan. What it does ultimately is it takes the guesswork out of planning and implementation. And finally, research helps to define objectives and measure results. So please keep research in mind throughout the PR process, especially at the beginning to assist with planning and at the end to measure outcomes. What research does is it helps to bring your efforts full circle and maximizes your chances for success. Before we get into questions, I would like to invite you to our next webinar, which is Wednesday, September 17th at 10 a.m. Central. Gina Pappas and Ann Hadfield will be presenting speaking skills, presenting yourself with polish. Whether you are among the approximately 74% of the population that has speech anxiety or you simply want to refine your skills, this webinar will help prepare you for public speaking engagements. Albers Communications Group Director of Digital Marketing Gina Pappas and Account Manager Ann Hadfield will share tips on preparing for a speaking opportunity, the elements of a memorable presentation, delivering your message with clarity and confidence, and avoiding the most common errors that do seem to strike most speakers. Again, that's Wednesday, September 17th at 10 a.m. Central. You can register online at our website, which is alberscommunications.com/learning opportunities. And that address is on screen there. And one more housekeeping item. Of course, I'd like to thank each of you for taking time to participate in today's webinar. And what I'd like to ask you to do is take a few minutes to fill out the questionnaire that will appear on your screen at the end of the presentation. Please provide your comments about today's webinar or share topic suggestions because this is an ongoing series, and if you do have suggestions for future PR or digital marketing topics, please let us know those. And now what I'd like to do is take a few minutes to answer any questions that have been chatted in. And if you haven't done so already, feel free to chat your questions in through the chat function that's located in the lower left-hand side of your screen. So I'm going to ask Joni Williams, who is our Senior Account Manager on our team, to tell me if we have any questions that have come in.
Yes, Tom. We've had a couple come in so far. The first one is, I work for a nonprofit with a limited budget. What are some ways to integrate research inexpensively?
Well, in this particular case, I have two pieces of advice. And that first piece is your internal audiences will be the easiest to reach inexpensively. These audiences, I'm thinking in terms of a nonprofit organization, and these audiences might include staff members, board members, perhaps clients that you serve, and you might even have referral sources in the community that are important to your efforts. And you can reach out to these audiences typically very cost effectively through things such as small group discussions, written surveys, or even email surveys. Some nonprofit groups that I'm aware of have even used volunteers to come in and field telephone surveys. So those are some ways that you can field some research inexpensively. My second piece of advice was, remember how I talked about using existing research or secondary research. So you may belong to a certain trade organization that studies the issues that are important to your nonprofit organization. You can look at ways to use this existing information to help you in your public relations planning processes.
Okay, great. Another question that's been chatted in is, what are some ways to use secondary research effectively in a media release?
Well, we do use data all the time with our clients' public relations media outreach programs, and we either will use secondary data as the question suggests, or sometimes we even use primary data that we've collected through our clients' own surveying methodologies. But from a secondary perspective, it certainly always helps with the media if you have external resources such as a university or government entity that validates your storyline. An example that comes to mind for me is we represent the country's largest farm real estate company, and as an example, I remember one time we were pitching a story about the growing number of investors who are looking at farmland as an investment to add to their portfolios. And what we did was we used data from the USDA to support this story. And I remember distinctly that the reporter from the Associated Press who ended up doing a story on the topic that went nationwide told us that it was that external data from the USDA that helped really bolster our story and got him interested in the story. So using data that way to support your storylines can be very effective, because the number one rule for media is they want to tell stories that impact a lot of people. So if you can use data to show that your story impacts a lot of people, then you're going to really start off on a strong foot.
Great. I don't see any other questions chatted in right now, so I think that wraps it up at this point.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for everybody participating, and please consider participating in our next webinar.